Claude Code updated to version 2.197 this week. The update changed one setting by default. Claude Sonnet 5 replaced the previous default model. The context window, the amount of text a model can hold in memory during a single conversation, jumped to 1 million tokens. On the model that came before it, that same window existed too, but required an opt-in command. On Sonnet 5, there is no opt-in. 1 million tokens is the only size on offer. That single default swap touched pricing, output limits, and how every existing script that counts tokens behaves. Anthropic published the model on June 30. Claude Code shipped its side of the change roughly a day later. Claude Code is Anthropic's command line coding agent. It runs a model against a code base, and whichever model it defaults to sets the ceiling on how much context a session can hold before it starts losing earlier detail. Before this week, free and pro users on Claude Code ran on Sonnet 4.6, with the larger context window locked behind a manual command. Higher tier plans, Max, Team Premium, Enterprise, and Direct API access defaulted to Opus 4.8, Anthropic's stock tier model. Sonnet 5 doesn't sit above or below that structure. It sits inside it, priced well under Opus, with a context window that used to be a premium add-on now built in from the start. Anthropic frames Sonnet 5 as a drop-in replacement for Sonnet 4.6, not a new tier. Existing code that calls the older model needs one line changed, an updated model identifier, to run on the new one. In an early access testimonial Anthropic published alongside the launch, a Rust engineer described asking the model to investigate a bug. It wrote a failing test, applied a fix, then temporarily reverted the fix to confirm the original bug reappeared, a verification step nobody had asked it to run. The rollout happened in two steps. On June 29, Claude Code shipped version 2.196. It added organization level default models, so administrators can set a default that shows as org default in a user's model picker. It added readable names for new sessions, replacing generic identifiers. It added clickable file attachments. A command click now opens the file directly in Finder or Explorer. The next day, June 30, Anthropic published its Sonnet 5 announcement. The model is priced at 2 per million input tokens and 10 per million output tokens, an introductory rate that runs through August 31, 2026. After that date, pricing reverts to 3 and 15 per million tokens, the same per token price Sonnet 4.6 has charged since its own release. Sonnet 5 also ships with the new Tokenizer, the system that breaks text into the units a model actually counts and bills for. According to Anthropic's own documentation, the same input text produces roughly 30% more tokens on Sonnet 5 than it did on Sonnet 4.6. The context window is still 1 million tokens. Each of those tokens now covers less text. Adaptive thinking, the model deciding on its own how much reasoning a task needs, is on by default now. Manual control over that reasoning budget is gone. Requests that try to set one return an error. The same is true for temperature and other sampling settings. Set them to anything but default, and the request fails. Sonnet 5 is also the first Sonnet tier model to ship with real-time cybersecurity safeguards active out of the box, the same detection system Anthropic built for Opus 4.7 and 4.8. On the evaluations, Anthropic ran to justify that decision. The model tested weaker at cyber tasks than its own predecessor. Testing against a set of Firefox vulnerabilities developed with Mozilla, Sonnet 5 could not produce a single complete working exploit, matching Sonnet 4.6's score of 0. It did show a slightly higher rate of partial success. On the benchmark charts Anthropic published at launch, Sonnet 5 closes ground on Opus 4.8 at higher reasoning effort settings on tasks like agentic web search, measured with a benchmark called Browse Comp, and computer use automation, measured with OS World, verified. At lower effort settings, the gap to Opus stays wide. Anthropic also ran Sonnet 5 through an internal audit for a broad set of undesirable behaviors, including deception and cooperation with misuse. The model scored lower than Sonnet 4.6 on that audit, meaning fewer flagged behaviors. It scored higher than Opus 4.8 and an internal preview model called Mythos. Anthropic also raised rate limits across its consumer chat app, Cowork, Claude Code, and the API to accommodate the token cost of running higher effort levels by default. Claude Code's own update landed the next day as version 2.197. Beyond the default model change, it carried a list of fixes. An MCP authentication bug had been breaking connections to self-hosted GitLab and other enterprise identity providers. A voice dictation bug had been dropping spaces during fast typing. A reliability fix now lets long-running background sessions survive a restart, including on Windows, where that previously failed. The update also closed a security gap. MCP servers that a repository had self-approved through a committed settings file could previously launch automatically inside an untrusted workspace. That workspace now shows a pending approval indicator instead. Here is what the 1 million token headline leaves out. That window size was already available on Sonnet 4.6. Pro users could type a single command and get it. What changed is that the option to not have it disappeared. Sonnet 5 has no smaller context size to fall back to. Every request now runs through the larger window, whether the task needs it or not. In May, a Pro Plan user filed a bug report against an earlier Claude Code version. Their workflow had broken overnight. Claude Code had silently switched their default model to one that required a 1M token context, and that context tier drew from paid usage credits instead of the flag pro subscription. They got an error message instead of a warning: usage credits required, turn them on in settings, or switch models manually by hand. No email arrived first, no changelog entry warned them. That complaint predates Sonnet 5 by 5 weeks. It describes the same category of change this week's release now makes permanent. The difference is that Anthropic has built the behavior into the model itself, rather than into a background default that can silently flip again later. Whether that counts as a fix or the same problem with nowhere left to hide depends on how the introductory pricing holds up after August 31. The tokenizer change compounds the same question. A 1 million token window sounds like a fixed unit of storage. It isn't. It's a fixed unit of tokens, and the new tokenizer needs roughly 30% more of them to represent the same sentence than Sonnet 4.6 did. Per token price hasn't moved, so Anthropic calls the transition cost neutral. A user budgeting by word count or by the size of a code base in kilobytes is working from a ruler that just got shorter, and that pricing stays flat only until August 31. After September 1, the introductory rate expires and the offset goes with it. There is a second implication. Sonnet has always been the model teams reach for by default, with Opus reserved for harder tasks at a higher price. Anthropic's own charts show Sonnet 5 at high effort, landing close enough to Opus 4.8 on some evaluations to thin out the case for reaching past it. That pushes costs down for a large share of everyday agentic work and raises the bar for what justifies Opus pricing at all. Reaction on release day was not uniform praise. The announcement reached the front page of Hacker News within minutes, and the comment thread argued the model's real value lives inside the discount window. Outside it, several commenters pointed to open-weight competitors sitting in a similar performance band at similar or lower cost. Other comments cited Anthropic's own system card on a vulnerability discovery benchmark called CyberGym. Sonnet 5 scored below Sonnet 4.6 and near zero with default safeguards active. None of that appeared in the launch blog's benchmark charts, which focused on the agentic search and computer use tasks, where Sonnet 5 looks strongest. As of July 1, 2026, Sonnet 5 is the default model for Claude's Free and Pro tiers and available across Max, Team, and Enterprise. It runs in Claude Code on the Claude platform on AWS, Google Cloud, and in preview on Microsoft Foundry, though not through the older Bedrock Invocation API and without priority tier, the faster queue Sonnet 4.6 still supports. The 1 million token context ships as the only option. There is no smaller variant to select. Introductory pricing holds through August 31, 2026. Standard pricing takes over the day after. The Maybug report remains open on Anthropic's public issue tracker as of this recording. The pattern it describes just shipped again at a larger scale to every free and pro user on Claude Code, whether or not they ever read the thread. The version number will keep climbing. Claude Code has shipped dozens of point releases this year, most of them fixing something nobody outside a bug tracker will ever read about. This one changed the default nobody voted on. Inside a tool, millions of people run without checking the changelog first. The context window got bigger, the tokens inside it got smaller. Whether that nets out in a user's favor depends on a date on a pricing page 31 days from today.